there now. We start reading. So if everybody has got the text, we start reading. The Gita answers them in its later chapters. Okay?
Yes, Rangada.
Yeah. So the problem that the essays on the Gita is discussing is that the Gita accepts the Sankhya philosophy, which says that there are many Purushas. In the physical world, there are many Purushas. All of us are all Purushas and we are all separate. But this is only an appearance, and at the highest level, there is only one Purusha and he becomes the many. The one becomes the many in the lower level. So, Sankhya recognizes the truth of the lower level. Advaita recognizes the truth of the oneness, okay, at the highest level. So both are right. So now Gita has to find a solution for this. And the Gita finds a solution in the concept of three Purushas. Purusha is one, but at the lower level it seems to be many. And at the middle level, there seems to be a transition from one stage to another stage. And at the highest stage, you see that the division is apparent only, just like all the bodies are seeming to be separate, but they are all matter. Okay, exactly in the same way, this is what it does. So it posits three levels of the self: the Kshara Purusha, the Akshara Purusha, and the Purushottama. Okay, so this is the solution that the Gita answers, and it gives the, and Shriyamdo discusses the image of the birds on the tree. So that we'll discuss. I'll read each sentence. I think we have read it, na? You have to confirm. I remember having read it.
We have done only half the paragraph.
Yeah, that's right. So I'll go through each
sentence.
sentence.
Only half the paragraph till the silent witness withdrawn from the enjoyment. Which is about from the bottom, we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines from the bottom we have to do.
Okay.
We're discussing about the birds, Rangada.
That's right.
The point of view in the two verses is different. The point of view in the two verses is different, but they have a common implication.
Okay. The point of view, right? But that's more than okay. Your text is different. Okay, so the point of view in the two verses is different. Okay, so what are the two verses? He is talking of in one verse and another verse. He is talking of the Mundaka Upanishad and the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, and there is also a reference to it in the Rig Veda. Okay, so what is the point of
Rangada, in my book, I have the Vak edition. It is 15th chapter, 16th and 17th shloka.
Acha, okay.
Reference, yeah.
Okay.
Vak has the reference of the Vak book edition has the reference of the shlokas about which is.
No, it is it is 5th chapter or 15th.
Yeah.
15, 6 and 17. 16 and 17.
Yeah, that's right. 16 and 17. Yeah. That's Dvau imo purushau loke shara akshara eva cha shara sarvani bhutani kutastho akshara uchyate uttama purushastu anya paramatmeti udahita yo lokatrayamavishya vibharti avyaya ishvara. So these are the two verses which say that three. Kshara is the mutable self. The self which comes down, it becomes a divine element in man, which you can equate with the psychic being. And the psychic being is Kshara. Okay, it is a representative of the divine, but it is in the physical world, in the body, and in the body of everything, animate and inanimate creatures. And that is slowly developing. It's a sleeping divinity, and the divinity is slowly awakening through the development of many, many lives. Each life it awakes a little bit more, each life it awakes a little bit more, until finally it can become the Akshara. It can rise and go out of the body mind life and become the Akshara consciousness, the self, the Brahman consciousness, which is immutable and which is eternal, infinite. You realize that it has always been and it is featureless. This is the self. So I'll read the point of view of the two verses is different. Okay, so read from there. The point of view in the two verses is different. They have a common implication. The images can be different, but the idea is the same. One of the birds is an eternally silent, unbound self or Purusha, by whom all this is extended, and he regards the cosmos he has extended, but is aloof from it. We'll stop here, okay? Or we can read the next also. The other is a Purusha involved in Prakriti. So what is the image? There is a tree and there are fruits which are the enjoyments which human beings have, enjoyments as well as sufferings, everything. Okay, the fruits are there. And there are two birds. One is sitting on the higher branch, okay, and when it is sitting on the higher branch, it is eternally silent. It is only watching. It is not eating and nor is it moving. It is watching. It is watching the lower bird. Okay. So, unbound self or Purusha. Unbound. It is free. It is not bound in the body mind life. It has come out and it is sitting on top. By whom all this is extended. So, what's meant by that? The silence creates a movement in the physical world. Or if you want even a more graphic example, the water behind the dam, which is absolutely infinite, eternal, pure and non-moving, starts moving. It comes through the dam and starts creating, and all the rush of the water goes into many channels, and the one water behind this dam becomes the many rivulets in the physical world. That's the image. So the one who is sitting on top is the immutable water behind the dam. Okay, it is not moving at all. Eternally silent. It never works. Unbound. It is free. Self or Purusha, by whom all this is extended. All this is what? The world. By whom the world is created. It's like a poet, okay, who has produced many, many poems. And all the poems are coming out of his brain. The brain is the self-silent and not, but it produces all the different, you can think of it in so many different ways. No? So this is one way of looking at it. Okay, so one of the birds is eternal silent, unbound self, by whom all this is extended. The word extended is very interesting. That which is compressed, that which is condensed, starts spreading itself out. Okay, you can think of that. Like the another image that we can think of is the glacier, and it starts melting and produces so many different rivulets. One, we have the all the snows on the highest peak. They are all seeming to be silent, but they start producing all the rivers. In the Himalayas, there are so many rivers that come down exactly in the same way. So the snows in the Himalayas are the silent bird sitting on the top of the branch, top branch. Okay, not the peak of the tree. The peak of the tree is Purushottama. Okay, so the second one is sitting on the lower branch, and it is the Purusha involved in Prakriti. Your soul is involved and inside your body-mind life, and it is divine in essence, but it is sleeping. It is imprisoned in the body-mind life. This is the image. Okay. The image is very clear. It appears 3 times. As I told you, Mundaka Upanishad, Shvetashvatara, and the Rig Veda. So, but the shlokas which are being referred to, as Archanathi said, are the 16 and 17 in the 5th chapter. Okay. So, no, sorry, 15th chapter. Yeah, you're right. Just one second. Chapter 15. Right. So this is the image. Okay. Now I go to the next sentence. The first verse indicates that the two are the same, represent different states, bound and liberated, of the same conscious being. Your soul, when it is inside the body, mind, life, it is the same soul which goes up. In one case, it's in the prison, and in the other case, it is free. That's what the first verse is saying. Somebody is telling you that. Okay. The first verse indicates that the two are the same, the two birds. Your soul, when it is inside the body, and when it is outside above the head. Okay. So they are the same. For the second unborn has descended into the enjoyment of nature. By the time when it comes down into the enjoyment of nature, it has descended from a clear air, transparent air, into the denser air and smoky substance of the physical world. So it gets trapped. Okay? The first verse indicates that the two are the same, represent different states, bound and liberated, of the same conscious being. For the second unborn has descended into the enjoyment of nature. It has taken birth in physical world, and it is enjoyment of nature. Enjoyment you have to interpret in pleasure as well as pain, okay, experience, and withdrawn from her. When the soul is in the lower nature, lower status, it is not aware that it can go up. Okay. The other verse, the other one that he is talking about, brings out what we would not gather from the former, that in its higher status of unity, the self is forever free, inactive, unattached. So, a slight difference between the two verses, because these are all interpretations of the mind. There is no contradiction between the two, but there is a slight difference. In the first one, the same soul is going up. In the same second one, the soul is going to a different status. That's what Shanbhi is saying. It is, you can say that. Now, in the first one, when it is in level 1, it is sleeping. But when it has gone up, it is awake. So it is slightly different. But the soul is the same. Okay, so that's what he's saying. Okay. Where is it gone? But the second unborn descendant has gone. Yeah. The other verse brings out what we would not gather from the former, that in its higher status of unity, the self is forever free, inactive, unattached. Although it descends into the lower being, into the multiplicity of the creatures of Prakriti. The same bird is coming down, but its status changes and withdraws from it by reversion in any individual creature to the higher status. Okay, so this, in one image, the same soul is imprisoned and come out. In the other image, it is slightly different. It has grown in stature. Okay, one is free and one is bound. So, and free, inactive, unattached, though it descends into the lower being, into the multiplicity of the creatures of Prakriti, and withdraws from it by reversion, going back. Reversion, revert, going back to the origin from where you came, in any individual creature to the higher status. This theory of the double status of the one conscious soul opens a door. Opens a door to what? The problem of the Gita trying to make harmony with the Sankhya theory, that there are many Purushas. It is not many Purushas, but the one is coming down becomes the many because it has gone into ignorance. So, but the process of the multiplicity of the one is still obscure. How does that one become the many? That problem has not yet been solved. So that it solves now by introducing the Next element, okay, the next one, Purushottama. There is a higher level of consciousness which combines both. So it has the capacity to remain silent, and it has also the capacity to go into movement in the physical world. The level 2, the self, is immutable forever. Okay, and in level 1, it is bound. Okay, this is the, so the problem is solved in the Gita by the introduction of the third level, where it has the capacity of both. It can remain silent if it wants, but it can also imprison itself if it wants. That's what Sam is going to say in the next paragraph, which we will read. Okay? Even this one maybe we have read, I think. Anyway, we can read it now. So, one of you read. Who will read? We decide quickly who will read. Okay, Tarika is the one usually jumps for the Gita. Go ahead, Gita. Yeah. Tarika, go ahead.
To these two, the Gita, developing the thought of other passages in the Upanishads, adds yet another, the Supreme, the Purushottama, the highest Purusha, whose greatness all this creation is. Thus, there are three, the Kshara, the Akshara, the Uttama. Kshara, the mobile, the mutable is nature. Swabhava, it is the various becoming of the soul. The Purusha here is the multiplicity of the divine being. It is the Purusha multiple not apart from but in Prakriti. Akshara, the immobile, the immutable, is the silent and inactive self. It is the unity of the divine being, witness of nature, but not involved in its movement. It is the inactive Purusha free from Prakriti and her works. The Uttama is the Lord, the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Self, who possesses both the immutable unity and the mobile multiplicity. It is by a large mobility and action of his nature, his energy, his will and power that he manifests himself in the world, and by a greater stillness and immobility of his being that he is aloof from it. Yet is he as Purushottama above both the aloofness from nature and the attachment to nature. This idea of the Purushottama, though continually implied in the Upanishads, is disengaged and definitely brought out by the Gita and has exercised a powerful influence on the later developments of the Indian religious consciousness. It is the foundation of the highest bhakti yoga, which claims to exceed the rigid definitions of monastic philosophy. It is at the back of the philosophy of the devotional Puranas.
Yeah, devotional Puranas. That's right. Okay. Particularly the Bhagavatam. Okay. So anyway, so these two, the Gita, I'm reading the beginning of the paragraph. These two, the Gita, developing the thought of other passages in the Upanishads. Okay, there are many Upanishads and they refer to all this. We should make very clear that in the Upanishads, all the three states are mentioned. Okay, they are mentioned. The Kshara Purusha is mentioned, the Akshara Purusha is mentioned, the Purushottama, the Supreme Lord, as Parabrahman, Paramatman, they use all these terms. But the link between the three and how the one becomes the many and how there is a middle status of the eternally fixed, silent self, all this is brought out very much by the Gita. It is not there. All the ideas are there in the Upanishads, but not so clearly spelled out as in the Gita. That's what I was telling you in the end. The Gita establishes a connection between the three, the Purushottama, the Brahman consciousness, and the psychic being below. Okay, these are the three which are connected. They are really the same at three different levels. Okay, To understand this again, we go back to the famous image of the baby and the adolescent and the old man. The image is the same person, but in three different states. And if you look only at one state, you will not recognize the other states. But if you go a little back, you will see, and you see the whole development, you will see that it is the same person. Okay, so that is this idea is brought out by the Gita, not by the Upanishads. That's what Sembhi is saying. So I'll quickly go through the paragraph. To these two, the Gita, developing the thought of other passages in the Upanishads. Okay. So he has given a footnote also. Purusha aksharat paratah para. Paratah para. Higher than the highest. Okay. Although the Akshara is supreme, there is a supreme Purusha higher than it, says the Upanishad. So very clearly, the Upanishad also mentions the third level, but using different words. Okay, Purusha Aksharat Parata Para, okay, even higher than the highest. That's the image used. Adds yet another, the supreme, the Purushottama, the highest Purusha, whose greatness all this creation is. The highest Purusha, which corresponds to the supermind. Okay, in Sri Aurobindo's philosophy, it corresponds to the supermind or the gnosis, where you have the both the Kshara and the Akshara, the immutable as well as the mutable. This chapter has been very clearly discussed in the Life Divine in the chapter which is called Brahman Purusha Ishvara Maya Prakriti Shakti. Brahman and Purusha and Ishvara are really the same, but in three different categories. It's the same. Brahman is the impersonal divine. Purusha is the personal divine. But when you are in the Brahman consciousness, you don't see the personal aspect. And when you see the personal aspect through bhakti or any other way, you don't see the impersonality. But when you go to the third level, you see both. Okay, that's what is being discussed. Higher, whose greatness all this creation is. Thus, there are three: the Kshara, the mutable, the Akshara, the immutable, and the Uttama, the highest. Okay. Kshara, the mobile, the mutable. It's a psychic being, na? It's going on growing. So it's a divine element, but it is growing. It is sleeping in the beginning and slowly awakening, gathering information and experience and growing by that. The mutable, Kshara, the mobile, the mutable, note the word mobile also. In the second level of the Brahman consciousness, there is no mobility at all. It is absolutely silent, static. It's like a video that is stuck. Okay. Okay. The Akshara, the mobile, the mutable is nature. Okay. Is nature, Swabhava. It is the various becoming of the soul. Becoming is not one, it is various. At the highest level, Purushottama. At the second level, Akshara. At the third level, Kshara. Various becoming of the soul. The Purusha here is the multiplicity of the divine being. So in the physical world, it becomes multiple. That is what explains the Sankhya philosophy. It is absolutely valid at the lowest level. Okay? It is the Purusha multiple, not apart from, but in Prakriti. It is the Purusha in the body, mind, life. Prakriti, you can take it as matter, life, mind, or in the individual, your body, your vital, and your mind. But the soul is there inside the body, trapped. Okay, by its own will. By the way, it's not forced to, but it descends into the darkness of the lower Prakriti because it wants to enjoy escaping. That's all. Akshara, the immobile, the immutable, is a silent and inactive self. It is the unity of the divine being. You see oneness there, na? You see level 2, your Brahman consciousness self, you see the unity of things. Okay, the witness of nature, but not involved in its movement. Very clearly, when you are In the level 2, the Brahman consciousness, you are not imprisoned in the body, mind, life. You have escaped and you start seeing the oneness of things. Okay, it is this, but not involved in the movement. You are outside and you are interfering in the level 1. You are just watching it. It is the inactive Purusha, free from Prakriti and her works. Prakriti is general, universal nature, and her works are what? The body, mind, life. In the individual and in the universe, it is the matter, life, the principle of life, prana, and the principle of mind. Okay. So these are the options. Now he is explaining the Uttama is a Lord, the highest one. Lord. Lord means it's a person. You don't apply the word Lord to something that is impersonal. Okay. Uttama is a Lord, the Supreme Brahman. Not the Brahman, but the Supreme Brahman. The Supreme Self who possesses both the immutable unity and the mobile multiplicity. So if the Gita develops the concept of the Purushottama, the problem of the Gita and the Sankhya is solved. It is not two different things altogether, but two statuses of the same self. That is how the Gita accepts Sankhya at a lower level, but accepts Advaita at the higher level. That's what he is explaining. Okay, so the Uttama is the Lord, the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Self, who possesses both the immutable unity and the mobile multiplicity. He has the choice to become whatever he wants. He is not bound to be impersonal forever, nor is he bound to be a prisoner in the body, mind, life forever. It is not like that. It is possible for it to graduate from one level to another level because the origin of everything is the Uttama Purusha. It is by a large mobility and action of his nature, his energy, his will and power that he manifests himself in the world, and by a greater stillness and immobility of his being that he is aloof from it. So I'm explaining in this sentence how it can be both. Okay? The Uttama is the Lord. Okay? It is by a large mobility and action of his nature. The Chit can use its power, Shakti, to create the world of movement. Okay? It can do that. Large mobility, note that. Okay? And action of his nature, his energy, will and power. Shakti. All these words describe the Shakti. Chit Shakti. The large mobility and action of his nature, energy, will and power, that he manifests himself in the world, and by the greater stillness and immobility of his being, that he is aloof from it. Part of him can manifest and part of him is above, unmoving. He can be both together, not sequentially, okay, but together, simultaneously he can be both. That's the whole interesting part. Yet is he, as Purushottama, above both the aloofness of nature and the attachment to nature. Aloofness from nature is the Brahman consciousness, level 2. Attachment to nature, level 1, ignorance. Okay? This idea of the Purushottama, though continually implied in the Upanishads, is disengaged and definitely brought out by the Gita and has exercised a powerful influence on the later developments of the Indian religious consciousness. Why? Why is he saying that? Because the personal aspect of the divine is there in the Uttama Purusha. And you can't fall in love with, or actually you can, but normally at our level, you can't fall in love with something impersonal. Okay? You can have knowledge of it, you can be wonderstruck, okay? You can wonder how this vastness is there. But the love and devotion is usually attributed to someone or something. So it needs the personal aspect of the divine. So when the Purushottama concept is there in the Gita, it gave rise to the Vaishnava theory and the Bhagavatam, which is the devotional aspect of the Indian religious concept. That's what he's saying. It is at the back of the philosophy of the devotional Puranas. Okay? The Bhagavatam as well as the Bhakti Yoga. Okay? And the Vaishnavism that came later on. Vaishnavism also, there are many, many schools. Huh? The, in fact, this whole ISKCON movement is some sort of distorted movement of the same devotional aspect. If you ever, have you ever gone to an ISKCON temple? It's there all over the world now. It's ISKCON
Yes,
temple.
I've been in Bombay and in Bangalore.
Yeah, they go on jumping, dancing and jumping. And so mother does not like that, okay? She says that it should be a calm, quiet devotion, not jumping about. Nowadays it has become quite common in the West also. In Europe, in America, many, many, all foreigners, huh? They go out into the streets and go on dancing and going on taking Krishna's name, okay? So many interesting videos are there, you can see. Okay, so this is what he's saying at the, so the reconciliation between the Sankhya philosophy of the many Purushas and the one Purusha of the Gita is reconciled. The reconciliation is made by the introduction of the third status, the Purushottama, which is not there in the Sankhya philosophy. Okay, Sankhya philosophy stops at the level 2, but the Gita goes to level 3 and explains how it is all one. The Upanishads refer to all of them, but not clearly saying that all the three are one. And Srimdu also now takes this thing up and makes it a huge point that there is a continuity between the highest and the lowest. If the continuity is not there, his idea that the universe, the imperfect universe, can one day become purpose is not possible. If there is not a non-continuity, the non-continuity is the philosophy of the Mayavadas, the Buddhists, and all others. Okay, they say that there is no continuity. There are only two worlds: one world here below and one world above. And you, if you want the divine, go to the world above. It's impossible to get it at the lower level. Sriyamdar doesn't agree, and the Gita also goes up to the Purushottama level, but the Gita does not talk of evolution. Sriyamdar says later on that the Gita stops there purposely because probably it was not yet time to reveal that. In everything there's a time now to reveal. You can't talk of the deep philosophy to a kindergarten student. Only when it goes to knowledge, then it's possible to talk about it. So this is what he's saying. We have 10 minutes more, 9 minutes. We'll read the next para. Okay. So the idea is clear, no? The difference between the Upanishad images and the Gita image and the Sankhya philosophy. They're all true, but partial expressions. Okay. Sriyamdar goes even beyond the Gita. Okay. Now we read the next one. The Gita is not content either. Tarika has finished reading. So next is either Sumki or Yasmin or Archanadi, anyone, whoever is willing. Go ahead.
Shall I read?
Yeah, please do that. The Gita is not content.
The Gita is not content either to abide within the Sankhya analysis of Prakriti, for that makes room only for the ego sense and not for the multiple Purusha, which is there, not a part of Prakriti, but separate from her. The Gita affirms, on the contrary, that the Lord by his nature becomes the Jiva. How is that possible, since there are only the 24 principles of the cosmic energy and no others? Yes, says the divine teacher, in effect, that is a perfectly valid account for the apparent operation of the cosmic Prakriti with its three gunas and the relation attributed to Purusha and Prakriti there, and Prakriti, there is also quite valid and of great use for the practical purposes of the involution and the withdrawal. But this is only the lower Prakriti of the three modes, the inconscient, the apparent. There is a higher, a supreme, a conscient and divine nature, and it is that which has become the individual soul, the jiva. In the lower nature, each being appears as the ego. In the higher, he is the individual purusha. In other words, multiplicity is a part of the spiritual nature of the one. This individual soul is myself. In the creation, it is a partial manifestation of me, Mamaiva Amsha, and it possesses all my powers. It is a witness, giver of the sanction, upholder, knower, Lord. It descends into the lower nature and thinks itself bound by action, so to enjoy the lower being. It can draw back and know itself as the passive purusha, free from all action. It can rise above the three gunas and liberated from the bondage of action, yet possess action, even as I do myself, and by adoration of the Purushottama and union with him, it can enjoy wholly its divine nature.
Yeah. So in this paragraph, the Gita is very clearly showing the connection. Okay, it shows all the different statuses: the Sakshi, Anumanta, Bharta, Jnata, okay, and the Ishvara consciousness. The same consciousness can rise and fall from the different planes of consciousness. It can rise to the highest, it can also descend to the lowest. And when it is descending to the lowest, it hides itself. It slowly reduces its consciousness, reduces its power, reduces its ananda also, and gets trapped in the lower, but by its own will, because it is playing a game with itself. Okay. So we'll go through the paragraph. The Gita is not content either to abide within the Sankhya analysis of Prakriti. Okay. Now he has spoken about the self all this time, the Purusha aspect. Now he is talking about the Prakriti aspect. Okay. Remember, this highest level is Sat Chit Shakti Ananda. Chit is consciousness, which is the Purusha aspect, and the Shakti is the power aspect, the mobility aspect, which is the Prakriti. So, he has discussed about the Purusha, now he is discussing about the Prakriti. And in the Sankhya, Prakriti is one, always at the lower nature. In the Sankhya philosophy, Prakriti is only one and it is universal nature. But the Gita says, wait. It is not fixed at the lower level only. Just as the Purusha also is climbing. It can take various things. The Purusha can stand on the lowest staircase of the lowest step of the staircase, but it can also stand in the middle and it can stand at the top. Exactly in the same way, there is a lower staircase which is the Prakriti, but there is also a higher staircase, and that's the Para Prakriti. The staircase is there, and the Purusha is standing on the staircase. So, this is the difference again between Sankhya philosophy and the Gita. The Gita says there is a Para Prakriti and a Apara Prakriti. So, that's what we're going to discuss now. The Gita is not content either to abide within the Sankhya analysis of Prakriti. You remember, Prakriti is one, says the Sankhya, but the Gita says that Prakriti also becomes the many. Okay, that's what he will explain now. Okay, for that makes room only for the ego sense and not for the multiple Purusha. Okay, so because the Sankhya philosophy, it's only the lower, and that's an ego sense. Okay, and not for the multiple Purusha, which is there, not a part of Prakriti, but separate from her. Okay? The Gita affirms, on the contrary, that the Lord, by his nature, the Lord is Chit and his nature is Shakti, becomes the Jiva. Okay? So it is by his nature, Para Prakriti Jiva Bhuta. That is the words used in the Gita. Para Prakriti Jiva Bhuta. That's the individual soul. How is that possible, since there are only the 24 principles of the cosmic energy and no others? Yes, says the divine teacher. The 24 principles we have discussed earlier. If you remember, we had a chart and Archana sent that chart to everybody. You remember that? That's the 24 principles. If you have to remember all these things, okay? There is the 24 principles of Prakriti. We had a chart and it was put up on the net, okay? So, just very quickly to remind you, there is the Purusha and the Prakriti, and the objective aspect, you have ether, air, fire, water, earth, and corresponding to that, sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. So one are the Mahabhutas, Pancha Mahabhutas, and the other is the Tanmatras. The sound, smell, touch, all these things are the Tanmatras. Then on the other side, you have Buddhi, Ahankara, and Manas, and when it comes down, it becomes the Jnanendriyas and the Karmendriyas. The Jnanendriyas are the eye, ear, nose, tongue, skin, and the Karmendriyas are the hand, foot, mouth, the anus, and the reproductive organ. So these are the 24 principles. But it's okay. It's quite okay. But the Gita goes beyond that. Okay? It says that the Prakriti is not only one at the lower level, it is not only universal nature, it can also be individual nature, and it can also be the universal perfect nature, para Prakriti. Okay, that's what he's saying. The gradation which you apply, which the Gita applies to the Purusha, it applies also to Prakriti. That also is graded, it says. Okay. How is that possible since? Yes, says the divine teacher in effect. That is a perfectly valid account of the apparent operations of the cosmic Prakriti. Apparent operations, those things which are seeming to be the many, okay, they are only apparent, but it's true what it is saying, which is three gunas. When it comes down into the Prakriti, lower Prakriti, apara Prakriti, it is subject to it is creating and itself subject to the Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, the three gunas. Sattva corresponds to the mind, the Rajas corresponds to the vital, and the Tamas corresponds to the physical. Only corresponds, it is not that. And the relation attributed to Purusha and Prakriti, there is also quite valid. The Sankhya is valid at the lower level and of great use in the practical purposes of the involution and the withdrawal. So Sankhya is not wrong, it's quite right at the lower level. But this is only the lower Prakriti, apara Prakriti, of the three modes. The three modes again, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. The inconscient, the apparent, okay? That which is only an appearance, it's a shadow. The world is a shadow, it's only apparent. It's not the real thing. There is a higher, a supreme, a conscient and divine nature. Okay? That is the para Prakriti. The divine nature is at the highest level, it is Shakti. It is not mechanical energy, mechanical unconscious energy of the lower world. The apparent nature, Prakriti, is unconscious and mechanical. The river is flowing, the wind is blowing, there is no consciousness in it. It seems to be, but it's not true. It is hiding inside the appearance. Okay, that's what he's saying. There is a higher and a supreme. And that supreme Shakti is conscious, fully conscious, and it's got a divine nature. And it is that which has become the individual soul, the Jiva. So, the Purusha is the Chit, and the Shakti, when it comes down, it becomes the individual soul. Okay, that's what he's saying. In the lower nature, okay, in the physical world, each being appears as an ego. Okay, so the individual seems to be the ego. In the higher, he is the individual Purusha. In other words, multiplicity is part of the spiritual nature of the one. The supreme nature can become the many, divide itself up apparently into the many, and yet remain one essential at the highest level. This individual soul is myself. In the creation, it's a partial manifestation of me. Mama eva ansha. Mama eva. It is my own part. Okay. Mama eva amsha. It and it possesses all my powers. So the individual soul is potentially divine. It contains all the powers of the divine. It is witness, giver of the sanction, upholder, knower, Lord. It descends into the lower nature and thinks itself bound by action, so to enjoy the lower being. It can draw back and know itself as the passive Purusha, free from all action. It can rise above the three gunas and liberated from the bondage of action, yet possess action, become master of the action itself, even as I do myself. And by adoration of the Purushottama and union with it, it can enjoy wholly its divine nature. Okay? So, in the Sankhya, it is fixed. There is a soul which is trapped in the body, mind, life and escapes. Fine, that's all. That's true. That's where the ascetics and the Buddhistic, they limit themselves to that philosophy. The Gita goes further and so does Sribdo. No, there is a connection and it can go even higher than that. And it can become master of the lower nature. In the Sankhya philosophy, in the Buddhistic philosophy, in the Mayavada philosophy, there is only liberation. Going up to level 2, only liberation. But Gita says it can come down and it can possess in the physical world all the powers of the supreme divine. The individual can become divine in the lower nature. But that universally also there is an evolution, the Gita does not go to that. Okay? So, we have gone 3 minutes beyond our time, but we have finished this. So, the last bit is a very small para. We will read that next time. And then further development of the idea of the Sankhya, the Yoga and the Vedanta. That we'll do next time. So such is the analysis. We have to do this next time and go on to the next para, next chapter. Okay? Au revoir, everybody. Have a nice day.